Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Why Track Time Now? This webinar is brought to you in partnership with Umbrella Consulting, a premier CISPRO partner, and Wrightsoft, the leading software developer of warehouse management and time tracking solutions built for manufacturers using CISPRO. My name is Sue Pogachnik, and I'm the marketing manager here at Wrightsoft, and I'll be helping moderate today's session. During the next 40 minutes or so, Ryan Winnicke, product manager for Wrightsoft, will discuss the disruption created by COVID-19 and why manufacturers are embracing digital time tracking now. Then David Henkel, the Wrightsoft sales and implementation specialist for time tracking solutions, will discuss why Hexagon Mining selected a new time tracking solution and the results they've achieved so far. Then we'll do a quick attendee poll. And then Ryan will highlight 6 simple steps to help you select your next time tracking solution. Dave will follow up with a demonstration to show you what digital time tracking looks like using WrightTime. We've allotted time at the end of the webinar for you to ask Wrightsoft and Jeremy Wright, senior consultant from Umbrella, any questions you may have. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items to cover. First, today's session is being recorded, and we'll send you a link to the recording after the webinar airs. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, just reach out to us via the chat button. And finally, you can submit your questions throughout the webinar via the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. I'll now turn the presentation over to Ryan.
Thank you very much, Sue. So as we get started, let's just talk a little bit about the topic that has impacted organizations throughout the world and in Canada and how it relates to today's discussion of time tracking and going digital. COVID-19's really created massive disruption across the globe, and it's impacted every market force from financial, political, technological, environments. The pandemic has really created both demand and supply shocks, and it's forced organizations to rapidly adapt and modify to the environment around them. All of these, which really impact the market, your company specifically, and competitors as well. It'll be really interesting to see how researchers study the social and economic impacts of this pandemic for quite some time. But I think the bigger question really weighing on everyone's mind is, what is the new normal going to be, and how is it going to impact my personal life and organization on a day-to-day basis? According to PwC's Global Crisis Center, most crises require short-term reactions around mobilization, medium-term stabilization efforts, and strategizing for long-term and permanent transformation. However, we really believe that manufacturers should strategize now on how they can transform and position their organization in ways that will give them a competitive advantage and help really create greater resilience in post-COVID. And this really ought to be done on the heels of the disruption throughout the crisis process and during the recovery phases that we go through. So there's really 4 key reasons why manufacturers really are embracing digital time tracking today. The first comes with errors. The manual time tracking that customers often do result in time clock errors that can affect payroll processing, and it leads to incorrect job time or production information due to those messy timesheets or illegible handwriting. On average, humans are going to make 1 error for about every 300 characters, and this is really what can lead to those inaccuracies throughout your jobs, throughout your timesheets, and your job standards as well. The second factor is the time and money. A big issue with manual time tracking is the amount of time it takes to enter the data and the time lag in accessing that updated information. COVID-19 really illustrated exactly how important it is to be able to access up-to-date information on where jobs are at in the process, where people are at within your organization, and being able to see that quickly and easily. And that leads us to really the third factor, which comes down to visibility and monitoring. With digital time tracking, it allows you to see what's happening and monitoring performance in real time. It's going to let you see where gaps are in performance to really help eliminate those inefficiencies and waste areas within your organization. The fourth factor comes down to offsite time tracking. Some manufacturers and distributors, they offer an on-site service for their customers, whether it be to set up products, to train users, or do repairs. And then with COVID, we've also seen organizations that are having employees working remotely due to COVID-19 restrictions. With digital time tracking, it allows you to see what's happening in real time, regardless of where your employees are actually working. All they need to access that is a mobile phone to begin tracking their time. The net result is that manufacturers with access to this real-time information operate at a significant competitive advantage. And to put this all into perspective, Dave's going to highlight how one of our latest customers has really improved their operations with implementing digital time tracking within their organization. Dave?
Thanks, Ryan. Our newest customer, Hexagon Mining, has 16 locations around the globe. They manufacture collision avoidance safety devices designed to prevent accidents in the mining industry. The first site to be implemented with RightTime was in Tucson, Arizona. Other sites soon to follow. Hexagon started vetting time tracking systems after they became overwhelmed with the daunting amount of time spent collecting time and production data using multiple systems. In fact, Hexagon had one full-time employee whose sole job was to compile complex, inefficient spreadsheets to generate reports and to input them into their ERP system. This meant that the production data was always several days behind, and they had no visibility into what was happening in real time. This affected their ability to quickly analyze the status of their capacity and production output. This also meant that their job standards were frequently outdated. Not only that, but COVID-19 hit and the production manager needed the ability to work remotely.
And I think that was one of the key things that Hexagon really was able to see with implementing is being able to remotely manage what was still going on in the facility with COVID-19 and being confident that work was still getting done on time.
After vetting over 50 time tracking solutions, Hexagon discovered that RightTime was the best fit for their needs. Working with RightSoft, it took Hexagon only about 2 weeks to onboard, train, and get all employees using RightTime for time clock and job punches. Right after implementing, Hexagon began to instantly see time and production data in real time using one system that was easy for their operators to use regardless of where they were working. Hexagon gained incredible results in a short amount of time. After implementing RightTime, Hexagon was able to eliminate one full-time data entry position and allocate them to a higher value role. The production manager, Jace, was able to fully perform his job using RightTime. As a result, Jace was able to confidently work from home during the darkest days of the pandemic. Instead of constantly walking the production floor to analyze the status of the job, Jace was able to see what was happening using RightTime. He didn't have to rely solely on his gut instinct and experience to make those decisions. With RightTime, he gets real-time visibility instead of waiting for days of production data. He can make better management decisions based on the reports he generates out of RightTime.
So one of the questions too, Dave, that I think a lot of customers have comes down to, so with Hexagon Mining, were they able to track that remotely? Did they have it on site that they had a server, or were they hosting it? How does RightTime work from that perspective?
Yeah. The beauty of RightTime is that it is offered as a hosted solution. This means that the users simply log into RightTime using a secure URL with their user credentials on their computer or mobile phone.
And I think one of the other key objectives from when we were working with Hexagon Mining was sheerly the number of spreadsheets that they are compiling together. And if I remember correctly, Dave, Jay said that they basically were spending, that full day compiling those spreadsheets. And with implementing Right Time, they could get all of their what they call management reports for their director meetings done within less than a half hour's time.
Exactly. So they're able to eliminate that huge pain point within their organization and their process and really streamline getting those reports. So let's take a minute and do a quick poll. How are you tracking your time on your jobs today?
So you guys should see a poll that launched, and you can put your responses in there. We just want to get a better understanding of where the people on the call today are at from a time tracking standpoint and where they're looking to go. So we'll give you guys just a few more seconds to get all those responses in there.
And Ryan, just while people are filling out that form, you were mentioning reports that can come out of Right Time. If you can pull the data into Excel, is there a way of creating your own custom reports that show you what you want in your specific organization?
Yeah, so within Right Time, and Dave will cover it a little bit later as well, one of the benefits is being able to really take all of that data you're spending time tracking and compile that into the reports that you need. And then if you need to put it, for example, like Hexagon, they had a lot of director reports that they spent on their quarterly meetings compiling data for. They were able to just export that data into their existing quarterly spreadsheets that they use to generate those easily. So.
Great, thanks.
All right, so we're just going to end the poll there, and I should be able to share the results. It looks like we're a little bit across the board in terms of how customers are tracking time today. We have about 33% are using paper timesheets or writing it on their job travelers. We got 17% using Excel spreadsheets. And then 33% already might be using a time tracking solution and 17% not using a time tracking solution at all. So with that being said, we kind of want to talk through, based on that feedback, highlighting what are the simple steps you can take in selecting your time tracking solution and identifying what's going to be a good fit for you. So the first step really is examining your internal processes and identify, let me stop sharing these results quick. There we go. The first step is to examine your internal processes and identify where your biggest pain points are. So perhaps you could be like Hexagon and you have numerous paper processes, you have spreadsheets, data errors, and it really prevents you from real-time job visibility and slows down that decision-making process. The second step that you need to look at is deciding which of the pain points or gaps in your process that you want to prioritize and fix. You may not be able to get everything right out of the get-go, so it's finding out what's going to be your biggest pain points that you can resolve with looking for a specific solution. The next step is to evaluate your options based on your specific needs. So what that means is, besides your functionality and ease of use requirements, there's also other factors to consider, such as, do you need real-time system integration? Or how quickly do you want to implement? How long does it take to implement the software? I know a big concern of a lot of organizations is, how many of my resources is it going to take to get this solution off the ground? Another thing to consider is, how easy is the software to update and maintain for ongoing system and device compatibility? Is it something that can be self-administered without an expert, or do you have to have an expert to be able to know how to use the system? All of these factors really impact your total cost of ownership when you're looking at solutions. Also, as you're evaluating your options, you're going to want to consider whether you need a custom or standard solution. While a custom solution can really be designed to meet your exact needs, it's often more costly and time consuming to implement and maintain that going forward. A standard plug and play solution typically is going to meet 80% or more of your needs out of the box, but you can also configure it to match your processes as well. And it's generally, from a long-term perspective, going to be more budget friendly. It'll implement faster and be easier to maintain as well going forward. The next key step in the process is really to look at what you want to track with your devices and where you want to track it within your organization. So you may want to collect time clock punches, or you may want to track punches on jobs and tasks to replace your paper timesheet travelers that people are writing their time on. And the other big question is, where do you want to collect it? Do you want to set up kiosks throughout your facility, or do you want to have devices at each of your production work centers as well? The other thing is, do you have employees that you need to track time for off-site? And what does that process look like? Another factor that customers don't always think of right away is whether you need to track indirect time. So indirect being things such as training or shop cleaning or machine maintenance that aren't necessarily being directly tied to a job, but you still want to understand where that time is being spent. And then the last factor with what we were talking about with COVID is, do you have to do any COVID screening? So when somebody comes in for the day, do I have to capture whether they have any symptoms or not? We also see customers looking to capture things such as safety assessments for jobs and being able to check those boxes as well. The last step in the process is to really evaluate the features of various solutions against your key business needs. And as we're kind of working through that, we're going to actually transition over to Dave, and he's going to briefly show you what time tracking actually looks like using the RightTime product today as well. Dave, I'm going to transition it over to you now.
All right, thank you, Ryan.
You should be able to share your screen.
All right, Ryan, if you wouldn't mind, just let me know when you can see my screen here.
Just give it a minute here. There we go. I can see your RightTime now.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. As we log into RightTime, I just want to set the stage of the two different use cases users might interact with RightTime. The first use case is a user will clock in like a kiosk type setting, often with multiple users using a shared device. The main objective is conducting those time clock and job transactions quickly, often using barcode scanning. So this is RightTime Quick Start. As you can see, as you will soon see, the login transaction recording process is very simple and seamless. Most importantly, quick, which is very critical when multiple users are sharing a device. Majority of our RightTime users conduct the login process using an employee badge for the purpose of accuracy and speed. However, you can log in using a username and password. So I'm gonna begin the login process. And in today's demo, I'm actually gonna scan in. All right, the first thing that we have to do is indicate that we're in for the day. Now, one way RightTime has helped our customers adapt to COVID-19, kind of like Ryan mentioned, is the ability to utilize the prompt functionality to collect for COVID-19 screening questions. And again, you can use this for safety questions as well. These prompts could also be used to collect additional data such as scrap quantity, completed good, etc. So I have not been exposed to COVID. I'm going to log in, or clock in, I should say. The next step is to start my job for the day. And again, we want to utilize that scanning functionality. So I'm actually going to scan my job. And then you just simply hit start. And then the next user behind can scan in and begin their day as well. The next use case for Right Time is the user that conducts their job in like a workstation with their own device, whether this is a PC at a workstation, a mobile device, etc. Now you will notice the login process looks the same. We can scan an employee badge or enter in a username and password.
And just to clarify, Dave, for some of the users on the call today, I believe some of the attendees are CISPRO customers. So basically, when you're looking at Right Time and you're talking about jobs and tasks, what that really means from a CISPRO perspective is your CISPRO job and the operations associated to each of those jobs, operations and work centers, just so everybody's clear.
Yeah. And kind of like Ryan mentioned here, in this type of setting, I as a user can see the list of available jobs. I can see my active jobs. Now, if I need to start and stop those jobs, I can do it from here as well. The user can also view their time card to see what they worked on for the day. And they also can use this time card to see what they worked on for the week as well. If given permission, the user can add transactions retroactively instead of real time. So you can simply edit those transactions. I can change the total time and simply correct or edit a transaction.
And Dave, just to clarify, as a user, I would be able to add hours for jobs, but maybe require my employees to still punch in and out for time clock punches. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So if I needed to add a job, I can do that as well and kind of use the drop-down menu to select the job. Maybe I need to add some time in for like a meeting or machine maintenance. I can do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And you can see here from a graph perspective, my time clock transaction was 6:59, but I didn't start my job till 7:36. This is the real return on investment, is to gain that visibility. And to Ryan's point, maybe my supervisor indicates that I need to allocate that half hour of time either to that meeting or machine setup so I can get a full picture of what I did for my day. All right, so now that we've seen what a production user how they would interact with Right Time, let's take a look at how a supervisor or administrator would interact. So I'm just going to log out of here. I'm going to log in as a supervisor. Again, I'm just going to scan my badge. As a supervisor, we want to see what is happening on the production floor. With Right Time, supervisors can see in real time what is happening without having to walk that floor, without having to, disrupt the employees to gain additional information. You can see what's happening in real time, discover and resolve issues versus later. One way we can do that is by looking at what we have an issue list. We can see what issues are happening, which will allow more productive use of time to resolve those issues. And again, this dashboard can be completely configurable. So if I'm a line supervisor, maybe I am really interested in like a job detail. We call these widgets, and these can be completely configurable depending on what I want to see in real time. Another responsibility as a supervisor is overseeing the employees. The user overview gives the supervisor visibility of their employees. They can see the status, productivity, and time clock information. If I want to get into more detail of an employee, I can simply click on their time card. So maybe I want to see a little bit more of what Cynthia Coleman's been doing. I'm going to click on her time card. And I can see what she's been working on. I can also manage Cynthia's time card and make any edits that might need to be corrected, whether that's a work record or a time clock transaction or a break. I can do that as well. One thing I'd like to note here as well is, again, the graph perspective. And this is kind of really what we do to see what our employee did for the day. You can see that she has total hours of 94.92, and she's only been on 33 task hours. So that's really what's driving her productivity down. If I had to make a guess, I imagine that she has a time clock entry error, and we might need to correct that.
And I think one of the other things just to note about where Right Time differentiates and where it can help people is really connecting the dots between those two pieces of data that are being tracked for time. Often with customers, they might have one solution to track time on time clock punches that goes to their payroll, and they have one solution or a manual solution for tracking time on their jobs. And what Right Time really does for customers is it connects those two pieces of data to really give you better insight into what's happening. So just like Dave was speaking about, we're paying Cynthia for 40 hours, but she only has 33 hours allocated to jobs or productive time. What happened to those other 7 hours? And we've actually seen some of our customers put bonus programs in place for employees that are able to achieve an 80% or higher productivity rate. So now you have that data within one system for supervisors to connect the dots on those things.
And Ryan,
Sorry, Dave.
No problem. Kind of taking what you said as well, I'm kind of giving it a real life example. So Hexagon Mining, they actually found that their employees that had the ability to see their time card in this graph perspective, they actually started to become more like aware of where their time is going, and kind of made it like a self-initiative to make sure that all of their time was accounted for the day. Because no supervisor or employee really wants to have that conversation like, hey, what did you do for the first half hour, 45 minutes of the job? So that's one way Right Time can even give that visibility from a user perspective to see their full insight of the day.
Perfect.
All right. Another responsibility that a supervisor has is to ensure and manage the production of the jobs on the floor. So we can click on the jobs overview here. I can see all of the active jobs and monitor the status of production. If I want to look into more detail, I can simply by clicking on the job. So if I want to gain a little bit more information on B113, I'm going to click on that. All the job information, such as expected times, total times, and task completion, is easily visible. I can see in real time if the job is on track or off track, if the job is over or under the expected time. And then if I want to even get more granular detail about this job, I can click on a specific task. Here I can see from a task level that additional information. I can also see when an operator has worked on that task, and I can actually see who. So for example, Eric Adams worked on this task on the 26th for 3 hours. We're only supposed to have 2 hours, and he has about 17 hours in it. I might have a conversation with Eric to say, hey, what was the delay? Maybe we had a machine breakdown, etc. And part of Right Time's out-of-the-box functionality is we can add notes and attachments. So whether that is a blueprint or a safety data sheet, we can attach that from a job and task level as well. And as a supervisor, the time card approval is a responsibility and an important task of the job. In the past, that used to be time consuming and unenjoyable. So we try to make that easy in Right Time. Especially if we're kind of coming from that paper process where everything's handwritten there could be ink smudges. Some people don't have the best handwriting. It just really adds to the difficulty. In this, oh, I'm sorry, Ryan.
Nope, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
I was going to say, I can now manage and improve employees' time cards. I can see their performance indicators. So going back to Eric Adams here, I can see, his work hours, his unproductive time. I can see from a transaction perspective. And again, if I catch something and if I need to make an edit or delete it, I can do that as well. And then from a timeline overview perspective, kind of going back to that graph, I can do that as well. And then from a weekly overview, a lot of our right time customers really like this because it really quickly gives their time clock hours, and I can analyze and catch any errors in here as well. So if all of this looks good, I can then go ahead and improve it. I can do it per employee, or I can select them all and I can approve that time.
And I think just to clarify for the attendees on the call, what that approvals process really does is it puts a checks and balances in place. So a lot of customers want those supervisors to be able to go through those time transactions, whether it be payroll or time clock transactions that are going to go to HR, or whether it be the work records that are going to go into your ERP for job costing. And being able to quickly and easily go through an approvals process on a daily or weekly basis allows you to stop those errors and catch them before they're getting to those other systems. So that way you're putting the correct data into your payroll solution and you're putting the correct data into your ERP solution for job costing as well. That's what that approvals really does for the systems.
And if you need to manage multiple users, time clock, and job transaction, the supervisor can utilize the right time group punch. And here I can select multiple users and clock them in or start them in on a job for the day. Now, the real use case for this is if you have like a line lead where maybe he's clocking in some temp employees, or if we have a remote crew and like a foreman or a supervisor is going to clock in those operators, you can do that from here as well. Right Time also has the ability to manage jobs with the help of our visual scheduler. The supervisor can assign jobs and tasks to a specific day, user, or department. This will then assign that job to that specific user or department and show up in their available jobs list, helping reduce the need to pass out those paper job packets. To assign, you simply drag and drop. So for today, I'm going to assign B200 to Cynthia. And now this will now show up in her My Jobs queue.
And I think one of the keys to the visual scheduling here is just to tie back to Hexagon Mining. This was one of the values that Hexagon Mining really found to help streamline assigning those jobs to their different users. And when we were talking about the production manager there, when he was actually working from home, this is how he managed the job assignment without having to be in the office. He could go through the night before and plan those jobs and actually put them into his employees' queues for what he wanted each person to work on for the next couple of days. He was building that out.
Yeah, definitely. And Jace really did that utilizing the job and task scheduling as well. So he, again, like Ryan said, was able to do that fully remotely and more accurately compared to their old process. And after all that time and work record and production data has been collected, we need to be able to retrieve and analyze that information. This can be done using the reporting. So now out of the box, Right Time has a multiple number of default reports to help our customers get started. reports like payroll, job overview, job detail, and task detail reports. Now, if I want to edit maybe a default report, I can do that as well. And you heard me mention this a couple times on how configurable write time is. If I need to, readjust these columns, or if I need to add a column, I can do that as well. Adding different filters, sorting, etc. I can then save and run that report. So now when I run that report, write time gives me some flexibility. I can export it to a CSV file. I can export it to an Excel file or a PDF. And especially going back to Hexagon Mining, this was one of the most powerful tools they found using write time, is because they could quickly generate those reports, export them to Excel, and then if they needed to manipulate or change that data anyway, they could do that from there. So all what you have seen today is part of the out-of-the-box solution included in write time. Plus the beauty of write time, and I said this several times, is how configurable it is. Being it's configurable, it's much simpler, or I shouldn't say simpler, but it can be implemented much quicker compared to like a custom type solution. With that, Ryan, that's the demo that I had prepared for you today.
And just before we move on, I see there's a couple of questions that came in that I just want to answer before we get out of the demo. The first question was, can you post using different rates or apply non-productive codes? And I'm assuming this is in direct reference to SysPro. So when you're setting up the system, there's two ways that you can post using different rates. You can set up different rates per work center and utilize those as defaults. But you also have the ability for a user to select a rate that they want to apply to a job that they might be working on as well, in there as well. And then the second question of that was in terms of non-productive codes. So if you notice, Dave, if you don't mind going to the My Jobs view, one of the things you're able to do with write time is import those non-productive codes into what we call an indirect job. So at the bottom of the list there, you'll see those indirect jobs. Those would be all of your non-productive codes that come in from SysPro that you can have your users tracking time against as well. The second question in the list here, is there an ability to automatically calculate overtime or double time based on certain rules? So within write time, you can calculate some of those simple time and attendance rules to set up whether you want overtime to be calculated after 40 hours or per pay period, or per week, I should say, or if you want to calculate it on a daily basis, you can set up some of those time off overtime rules within the system as well. So, all right, Dave, with that, I'm gonna take back the screen here.
All right.
And if you just want to confirm once you can share or see my screen again.
Yep, we can see it.
Right. So with that being said, we're going to turn it over to questions. And I seen that one more question came in, I believe. Sue, do you see any more questions in there?
Yeah, there are a couple of more questions, and we'll start out with some easy ones here. Ryan, I think you can answer this one. The customer says, we use SysPro for our ERP. Is write time integrated with SysPro?
Yes. So as I was kind of talking about it today with write time, it integrates directly to SysPro through the business objects to integrate in real time for bringing in that job information, as well as being able to post that labor back to your ERP system or back to SysPro as well.
Okay, I think Dave, you can take this one. Our team moves around the shop floor, from work center to work center, plus we have people who install products offsite. Can we write time on a mobile phone or other mobile device?
Yes, so Right Time can run on any device as long as it has access to a web browser. This includes laptops, tablets, handheld devices, and mobile phones.
All right. And then I think that relates to the next question that came in here, which is how does Right Time compare to CISPRO's shop clock? And I think we would say that, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I was actually going to open that one up to Jeremy if you wanted to talk a little bit. He kind of probably has the most experience with both
Yeah.
systems.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I think above all, the number one difference that I think is of most interest is that the way that Right Time is set up, we'll call it cloud-based. So you can access it from any device anywhere in the world, technically, and do your time tracking from your job site at a construction site or anywhere off of your headquarters, right? Shop clock it has a lot of the same features right within CISPRO, but that would be the number one difference is the ability to clock in and do all your time transactions offsite.
Okay.
Yeah, and just being able to track it mobilely as well through a number of different platforms, whether it's on your iPhone or if you have a tablet at those devices, Right Time really gives you that full flexibility for being able to track it on a number of different devices, wherever you might be.
And with that too, oftentimes, Ryan, we'll see customers that will use existing devices that they have to kind of prove the concept and then maybe invest into more of those rugged kind of manufacturing setting type devices. So Right Time has that flexibility where you can kind of bring your own device.
And Dave, that relates to the next question, which is, we use time clocks from our payroll provider today. Could these time clocks be eliminated?
Yes, so the time clocks could be eliminated. With Right Time, you can use that same device to capture the time clock and job punches, kind of what you saw in the demo today, whether that's using that quick start or in that, work center type own device where they can start and stop jobs and enter in their time clock transactions as well.
Okay, the next question is, can Right Time schedule vacation time off?
So within Right Time, you have the ability to track your time off in terms of being able to put that in for users to track their hours and have supervisors approve the system. That's in there today. We're actually in the progress of developing time off accruals as well, which is sort of the rounded out feature of time off management, being able to actually accrue those hours for users and generate the reports for supervisors to approve and deduct those time off hours from everybody's buckets, as well as managing those holiday hours that are allocated for paid versus unpaid time off times as well. So,
all righty. The next question relates to integration. How does Right Time link to ADP payroll systems?
I can take that one. So depending on what you use for ADP, Workforce Now is probably the de facto for most customers. So if you use Essential Time or Enhanced Time, we actually have a standard data connector for those time and attendance solutions. That way you can import your employees directly from ADP into Right Time. They can track their time clock punches and we can feed that back to the time and attendance solution from ADP. I know customers also that don't have Essential Time or Enhanced Time are able to generate the CSV reports to do a pay data import directly to Workforce Now if you don't have one of their time and attendance solutions.
All right. That looks like that is the end of our questions today. We'd like to thank everyone for attending. Through our cooperative partnership The consultants at Umbrella Consulting and the team here at RightSoft are available to help you find the right solution to meet your time tracking needs. Just reach out to us for more information.
Thank you.